Here I am, Jenna, the one who thrives on the precision of numbers, the balance of books, and the harmony of my life. Every entry in my ledger, every transaction, every penny accounted for with the meticulousness of a seasoned bookkeeper. My life, like my spreadsheets, has always been about order, about control. But there's a ledger I keep that's not so public, one filled with entries that are as hidden as the deepest secrets. Alex, my husband, he's the life of the party, the charmer who can sell ice to an Eskimo. His job as a sales manager takes him away often, leaving me in our quaint suburban home, a place where the lawns are manicured, and the neighbors are friendly, perhaps too friendly. And then there's Paige. When they moved in next door, it was like a new chapter in our lives, one that I didn't see coming. Paige, with their androgynous allure, their smile that could outshine the sun, quickly became more than just a neighbor. They were a breath of fresh air, a break from the monotony of my daily routine. Alex was always on the move, chasing deals, leaving me with ample time to forge a friendship with Paige. We'd share coffee in the mornings, discuss books, music, life. It was innocent, or so I thought. But beneath the surface, beneath the facade of our picture-perfect life, there was a part of me that was as meticulously hidden as the numbers in my ledgers. A part that craved something more, something different from the routine of my existence. What could possibly go wrong with a simple friendship? The question lingered in the back of my mind, a whisper of doubt that I chose to ignore. After all, what harm could come from a friendship with someone who seemed to understand me in ways Alex never could? Our interactions grew from casual coffee to late-night talks under the stars, from shared laughter to shared secrets. Paige became my confidant, my escape from the loneliness that often crept in when Alex was away. But as the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, I began to notice changes. Small at first, like the way Paige would linger a bit longer at my door, or how their eyes seemed to search mine for something unspoken. And then there were the gifts. Little tokens of affection that seemed harmless but carried a weight I couldn't ignore. A book with a note that said, "This reminded me of you." A necklace with a pendant that felt too intimate. The line between friendship and something more began to blur. And with it, my sense of security, my control over my life. I found myself at a crossroads, standing at the edge of a precipice, looking down into a darkness that was both terrifying and alluring. My heart, usually so guarded, so calculated, began to beat with a rhythm I didn't recognize. The question that once seemed rhetorical now echoed with a chilling clarity. What could possibly go wrong with a simple friendship? The answer was unfolding before me, in the subtle shifts of Paige's demeanor, in the way they looked at me, in the way I found myself looking back. And as I stood there, ledger in hand, trying to balance the books of my life, I realized that some entries, some secrets, were not meant to be neatly accounted for. They were meant to be felt, to be experienced, to be lived. And so I stepped forward into the unknown, into a narrative that was no longer about numbers but about emotions, about connections that defy logic. This was my story, a tale of meticulous balance and the chaos that ensues when the numbers no longer add up. Life with Alex was comfortable but routine. Our days were filled with work, occasional dinners with friends, and the usual marital banter. However, when Alex was away, the house felt too quiet, too empty. That's when Paige started inviting me over for coffee, or to watch movies. Their apartment was a sanctuary of art and music, a stark contrast to our more conventional home. One evening, after a particularly long day, I found myself at Paige's, sipping wine and discussing everything from art to personal dreams. Paige's openness about their identity as a transgender man was both enlightening and comforting. They shared stories of their transition, the challenges, and the liberation it brought. As we sat there, the room filled with the soft glow of candlelight, I couldn't help but feel a shift within me. Paige's stories of self-discovery, of breaking free from societal norms, resonated deeply. They spoke of a life lived on their terms, of finding joy in authenticity, and it made me question my own existence, my own choices. The conversation drifted to more personal territories. Paige asked about my dreams, my aspirations, not just as a bookkeeper, but as Jenna, the woman beneath the numbers. I found myself opening up, sharing my secret ledger, not of finances but of desires and fears, things I had never voiced aloud, not even to Alex. "It's like you're living two lives," Paige remarked, their voice gentle yet probing. "One where everything is neatly calculated, and another where the numbers don't add up." I nodded, feeling the weight of their words. We whispered plans of escape, of running away to a place where we could be ourselves without the weight of judgment or betrayal. But reality has a way of catching up. One evening as I was returning from Paige's, I saw Alex's car in the driveway. He wasn't supposed to be back for another 2 days. My heart raced, my mind spinning with excuses and lies. I walked in, trying to appear casual, but Alex's eyes were sharp, his demeanor unusually quiet. "How was your day?" he asked, his voice carrying an edge I hadn't heard before. "It was fine," I managed, my voice betraying my nervousness. He looked at me, really looked, and for a moment I thought he could see right through me. "You've been spending a lot of time with Paige lately," he said, his tone neutral but his eyes searching. The air felt thick, the room too small. I nodded, my throat dry. "Yes, we've become good friends." Alex paused, then said, "I'm glad you have someone to keep you company when I'm away. But Jenna, remember, there's a difference between friendship and something more." His words hung in the air, a subtle warning or perhaps an acknowledgement of his own suspicions. I felt the weight of my secrets pressing down, the ledger of my life no longer balancing. That night I lay awake, the darkness of the room mirroring the darkness of my thoughts. What would happen if Alex found out? Would he leave? Would he confront Paige? The possibilities were endless, each more terrifying than the last. The next day I found myself at Paige's again, the pull too strong to resist. We sat in silence, the tension palpable. "What if he knows?" I whispered, fear lacing my words. Paige took my hand, their touch both a comfort and a reminder of our betrayal. "We'll face it together," they said, but their voice lacked conviction. The uncertainty of our situation was a constant companion, shadowing every moment of joy with the specter of potential ruin. I was caught in a web of my own making, each thread a decision, a lie, a moment of passion. And as I sat there, ledger in hand, trying to balance the books of my life, I realized that some entries, some secrets, were not meant to be neatly accounted for. They were meant to be felt, to be experienced, to be lived. But at what cost? The question lingered, echoing in the quiet spaces of my heart, as I stepped further into the unknown, into a narrative that was no longer about numbers but about emotions, about connections that defy logic. This was my story, a tale of meticulous balance and the chaos that ensues when the numbers no longer add up. As I returned from the cabin, the weight of my secret seemed to press down on me like the heavy clouds that threatened rain. The thrill of what Paige and I had shared was intoxicating, yet the fear of discovery gnawed at me with every step I took back into our suburban life. Each laugh, each touch with Alex felt like a lie, a betrayal wrapped in the guise of normalcy. Paige and I had agreed to keep our distance, to let the dust settle, but the pull was too strong, too magnetic to ignore. One evening, while Alex was away on yet another business trip, my phone buzzed with a message from Paige. "Meet me at the park, usual spot." My heart raced, a mix of excitement and dread swirling within me. I made my way to the park, the shadows of the trees offering a cloak of secrecy as I walked. The park was quiet, the only sounds were the distant hum of the city and the soft rustling of leaves underfoot. I found Paige waiting at our usual bench, their silhouette against the dimming light of the evening. They looked up as I approached, their eyes searching mine for an answer to an unspoken question. "I couldn't stay away," I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. Paige's smile was both comforting and complicit. "Neither could I," they replied, their voice carrying the same mix of thrill and fear that echoed in my own heart. We sat close, our shoulders touching, the silence between us filled with the weight of our secret. But as we talked, the feeling of being watched crept over me like a cold chill. I glanced around, my eyes darting from shadow to shadow, expecting to see someone lurking, someone who might know. "Do you think anyone saw us at the cabin?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Paige shook their head, but their eyes didn't meet mine. "We were careful, Jenna. But you never know." The uncertainty was palpable, hanging over us like a fog. We spoke in hushed tones, planning our next moves, our escape, our future. But every plan was laced with the fear of exposure. "What if Alex finds out?" I whispered, the thought alone making my stomach churn. Paige squeezed my hand, their touch both a reassurance and a reminder of our betrayal. "We'll face it together," they said, though their voice lacked the conviction it once held. The park, once a place of solace, now felt like a stage where we were unwitting actors in a drama of our own making. Every rustle of leaves, every distant footstep, seemed to amplify the stakes of our clandestine affair. As the night deepened, we decided to part ways, the promise of another meeting hanging in the air like a forbidden fruit. I walked back home, each step heavy with the burden of my choices. The streetlights cast long shadows, and in each one, I saw the specter of my deceit. Back in the safety of my home, I tried to act normal, to slip back into the role of the dutiful wife. But the house felt like a cage, every perfectly placed item a reminder of the life I was betraying. Alex's absence was a relief, yet it also amplified the silence, making my secrets echo louder in the empty rooms. The next day, the routine of my life felt like a performance. At work, I balanced the books, each number a stark contrast to the chaos within me. My ledger, once a source of pride, now seemed like a mockery of the balance I had lost in my personal life. That evening, as I prepared dinner, the doorbell rang. My heart skipped a beat, thinking it might be Paige, but it was just a neighbor, stopping by with a borrowed tool. Yet, the interaction left me on edge, every friendly hello now tinged with suspicion. Was it just my guilt, or had someone seen something? The days passed in a blur, each one a mix of stolen moments with Paige, and the dread of Alex's return. When he did come back, his demeanor was different, more observant, as if he could sense the shift in our dynamic. "You've been spending a lot of time with Paige lately," he remarked one evening, his voice casual but his eyes probing. I nodded, my throat dry. "Yes, we've become good friends." Alex paused, then said, "I'm glad you have someone to keep you company when I'm away. But Jenna, remember, there's a difference between friendship and something more." His words hung in the air, a subtle warning, or perhaps an acknowledgement of his own suspicions. I felt the weight of my secrets pressing down, the ledger of my life no longer balancing. That night, I lay awake, the darkness of the room mirroring the darkness of my thoughts. What would happen if Alex found out? Would he leave? Would he confront Paige? The possibilities were endless, each more terrifying than the last. The next day, I found myself at Paige's again, the pull too strong to resist. We sat in silence, the tension palpable. "What if he knows?" I whispered, fear lacing my words. Paige took my hand, their touch both a comfort and a reminder of our betrayal. "We'll face it together," they said, but their voice lacked conviction. The uncertainty of our situation was a constant companion, shadowing every moment of joy with the specter of potential ruin. I was caught in a web of my own making, each thread a decision, a lie, a moment of passion. And as I sat there, ledger in hand, trying to balance the books of my life, I realized that some entries, some secrets, were not meant to be neatly accounted for. They were meant to be felt, to be experienced, to be lived. But at what cost? The question lingered, echoing in the quiet spaces of my heart, as I stepped further into the unknown, into a narrative that was no longer about numbers but about emotions, about connections that defy logic. This was my story, a tale of meticulous balance, and the chaos that ensues when the numbers no longer add up. The morning after, the world seemed to have changed. The sun rose, casting long shadows across our neighborhood, but the light felt different, harsher, as if it could illuminate the secrets hidden in the darkest corners of my heart. I woke up alone, Alex's side of the bed untouched, a stark reminder of the night before. I went through the motions of my morning routine, but every action felt mechanical, devoid of the usual comfort. The coffee tasted bitter, the shower water too cold, and the silence of the house was deafening. I stood in front of the mirror, my reflection a stranger, eyes haunted by the confrontation at the park. The day was a blur. At work, numbers danced before my eyes, but they no longer held the same allure. Each figure was a reminder of the balance I had lost, not just in my books but in my life. The precision that once defined me now felt like a cruel mockery. Lunchtime came, and I found myself in the break room, staring into space. My colleagues chatted around me, their voices a distant hum. I couldn't shake the image of Alex's pained face, the way his voice broke as he walked away. The guilt was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making every breath a labor. After work, I returned home to an empty house. The silence was oppressive, filled with echoes of past conversations, laughter, and now, the silence of betrayal. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Alex and I had shared countless meals, where we had planned our future. Now it was just another reminder of what I had shattered. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over Paige's contact. The desire to reach out, to find solace in their presence was overwhelming. But the fear of further complicating our lives held me back. Instead, I dialed Alex's number, my heart pounding in my chest. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then voicemail. His voice, recorded with warmth, now felt like a dagger. "Alex, it's me. I need to talk to you. Please call me back." The message felt inadequate, a feeble attempt to bridge the chasm I had created between us. I hung up, the silence returning with a vengeance. The rest of the evening was spent in a haze. I moved through the house, touching things that once brought joy, now just artifacts of a life I had taken for granted. The books Alex and I had read together, the photos of our vacations, the art pieces we had picked out for our home. Each item was a piece of the puzzle that was our marriage, now scattered and incomplete. Night fell, and with it, the reality of my solitude deepened. I lay in bed, the sheets cold, the room too big. My thoughts were a whirlwind of what-ifs and maybes. What if I had never let my friendship with Paige evolve? What if I had been more present in my marriage? What if Alex never forgave me? The phone remained silent, a mute testament to the distance between us. I wondered where Alex was, what he was doing, if he was as lost in his thoughts as I was in mine. Was he with friends, pouring out his heart? Or was he alone, grappling with the betrayal? Sleep was elusive, my mind replaying the confrontation, the hurt in Alex's eyes, the finality of his departure. I tossed and turned, each movement a physical manifestation of my inner turmoil. As dawn approached, I realized the true cost of my actions. The fallout wasn't just about the immediate pain of betrayal. It was the slow erosion of trust, the potential end of a life we had built together. The ledger of my life, once so meticulously balanced, now showed a deficit I wasn't sure I could ever correct. The morning light brought no relief. Instead, it highlighted the emptiness of my home, the absence of Alex, and the heavy burden of my choices. I knew then that the path forward would be fraught with pain, with apologies, with the daunting task of rebuilding or perhaps letting go. This was the harsh light of day, where the shadows of night could no longer hide the stark reality of my actions. The numbers no longer added up, and the balance I had so carefully maintained was lost, perhaps forever. The days following the confrontation were a blur. Alex moved out, taking only what he needed. Our friends and neighbors whispered, the community's judgment palpable. I was left to face the consequences of my actions, the loneliness of our once shared home, now a constant reminder of my betrayal. I sought therapy, trying to understand my actions, my desires, and the person I had become. Paige and I ceased all contact, the affair ending as abruptly as it had begun. In time, I learned to live with the guilt, to find forgiveness within myself. Alex and I divorced, but not without a final conversation, where we both acknowledged our parts in the unraveling of our marriage. The house felt empty, every room echoing with the silence of absence. I walked through the halls, my footsteps a hollow sound against the hardwood floors. The pictures on the walls, once vibrant with memories, now seemed to mock me with their frozen smiles. I would sit at the kitchen table, where Alex and I used to plan our future, now just a place where I confronted my past. Therapy sessions became my sanctuary. Dr. Martin, with her gentle voice and probing questions, helped me peel back the layers of my decisions. "Why did you seek solace in someone else?" she asked one session, her eyes kind but firm. I struggled to find the words, the truth tangled in a web of emotions. I felt invisible. I admitted, the words tasting bitter. Alex was always away, and I was here, living this meticulously planned life. "Paige, they saw me, really saw me." Dr. Martin nodded, her pen moving across her notepad. "And now, how do you feel about your visibility?" The question stung. "I feel like I've lost myself in the process of trying to be seen," I confessed, the weight of my choices pressing down on me. Therapy was a mirror, reflecting not just my actions, but the person I had become. I learned about boundaries, about the importance of communication, and the destructive nature of secrets. Each session was a step towards understanding, towards forgiving myself, but the journey was arduous. Meanwhile, the community's whispers turned into a constant hum. At the grocery store, in the park, even at work, I could feel the eyes, the judgment. "Did you hear about Jenna?" they'd murmur, their voices low but their words sharp enough to cut through my resolve. I avoided social gatherings, the thought of facing those who knew or suspected too much to bear. Instead, I found solace in solitude, in the quiet moments where I could reflect without the weight of external opinions. The divorce was inevitable, a formal acknowledgement of the fracture in our lives. Alex and I met at a neutral place, a cafe where we once shared laughter. Now the atmosphere was heavy with the gravity of our situation. "I never meant to hurt you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, the words feeling inadequate against the backdrop of our shared history. Alex looked at me, his eyes reflecting a mixture of pain and resignation. "I know, Jenna, but we both played our parts in this. I was absent, chasing success, and you found comfort elsewhere." The conversation was not filled with anger, but with a somber understanding. We discussed the logistics, the division of assets, the future of our home. It was all so clinical, yet beneath it all, there was an undercurrent of loss, of dreams deferred. As we parted ways, Alex's words lingered. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Jenna. And maybe one day, we can both find peace." Peace. It was a concept that seemed foreign to me now. I returned to our home, now just my home, and sat in the living room, the silence enveloping me like a heavy cloak. The question haunted me. Would Jenna ever find peace? Or would the echoes of her infidelity haunt her forever? I began to rebuild, not just my life but my sense of self. I took up painting, something I had always wanted to explore but never had the courage. Each stroke on the canvas was a step away from the meticulous control I once craved, a step towards embracing the chaos of life. I also started volunteering at a local shelter, finding solace in helping others, in seeing the raw humanity that often gets lost in the numbers of my ledger. Here, I wasn't Jenna, the bookkeeper, or Jenna the adulterer. I was just Jenna, a person trying to make amends, to find a new balance. The journey was not linear. There were days when the guilt would overwhelm me, when the memories of Paige's touch or Alex's pained expression would surface unbidden. But I learned to sit with these feelings, to acknowledge them without letting them define me. In the quiet of my home, I would sometimes talk to the empty spaces, to the ghost of the life I once knew. "I'm sorry," I'd whisper, not just to Alex but to myself, to the part of me that had been lost in the pursuit of something more. And as time passed, I found moments of peace, fleeting but real. They came in the laughter of children at the shelter, in the satisfaction of a painting completed, in the quiet mornings where I could sit with my coffee and not feel the weight of the world. The echoes of my infidelity would always be there, a part of my narrative, but they no longer defined my entire story. I was learning to live with them, to integrate them into the person I was becoming. This was my story, a tale of meticulous balance lost and found, of numbers that no longer added up, and of a life where the ledger of my heart was slowly, painfully being rewritten. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.